order to ensure that the ceasefire holds. And the U.S. engagement, of course, was key in that. And I believe that what happened yesterday was a violation, and that what we were expecting that this violation also will be, there will be a response for it. But fortunately, I think like the main parties are, both of them are acknowledging that the ceasefire should hold and they should stick to the agreement.
You're using the word violation. Can you tell us who do you believe violated the ceasefire?
Well, look, if we will start to describe the violations, it will be an open-ended questions. But what happened yesterday, the attack on the Israeli soldiers, that's basically a violation by the Palestinian Party. Now, Hamas has put a statement that they are not in communication with this group. We don't know yet. We didn't have any verification if this is true or not. We remained focused on making sure that the ceasefire itself holds. And also there were we heard some discussions about that Hamas are trying to delay the bodies. And we made it very clear for them that this is part of the commitment that we needed to be fulfilled. Now, look, Ayman, from our perspective, since the start of this, since October 7th until today, if you look throughout the process, we went through a lot of challenges, a lot of obstacles, and it wasn't an easy road. It was a very bumpy road. And basically, we tried our best to navigate and to make sure that, we achieved the first one, the first ceasefire, the second one, and now the ceasefire that hopefully will last. And throughout this process and throughout all the ceasefires that we had a lot of violations that's been taking place. Maybe many of them not being reported in the media because they were not as significant as the one that happened yesterday. But yesterday event was honestly something that very disappointing and frustrating for us to see that it's happening. And we were trying to contain it, and we mobilized right away after this and in full coordination with the United States. And we have seen that the U.S. also is committed to the deal.
So the ceasefire still holds, yes, as of now. I think there's been a sense that the first phase of the ceasefire was always going to be the easiest one because it was a very kind of clear terms of what was expected by each side. The second and potentially ultimate phase of the ceasefire was the one that people are really concerned about. Do you believe that both sides have a clear understanding of what happens next? Because there's a question as to whether or not the Israelis expect Hamas to disarm and then ultimately no longer be involved in any governing structure of Gaza. And yet Hamas officials continue to say they will be part of a post-war governing structure and have no intention of releasing or giving up their arms unless the Palestinian people tell them to do so.
Well, look, this is a very it's a very complex war, and it's a very complex solution for it. So, for us, the approach that we took from our side, since October 7th, we had two priorities. One is to bring the hostages back and to end the war and the suffering of the people of Gaza. And if you look throughout the last 2 years, we were the main stable player and factor in that formula, trying to mediate to bring this to the finish line. And I believe what we have achieved in Sharm el-Sheikh, bringing this conflict to the finish line. And our job today is to protect it and to safeguard it and to make sure that it holds, and then also make sure that it's implemented. It will be a complicated process. It will not be an easy process to go through the disarmament and the decommissioning, but it's part of the agreement. Now, I don't see that the governance will be a challenge because this is something that we've been very clear with Hamas, and Hamas response was very clear to us that they are willing to give up the governance. The weapon question, from their perspective, this is an obligation on all the factions, not on Hamas only. And basically, we are trying to push them all in order to get to a point where they acknowledge that they need to disarm and they need to move on to the next stage. And we need to make sure that the Palestinians are safe and the Israelis are safe. I think that's the whole purpose of the decommissioning and disarmament, and creating a political horizon for the Palestinian people, and creating the Palestinian agency that will be able to be the sole holder of arms.
Do you see right now, I mean, I'm not sure if you had the chance to see, but in a recent 60 Minutes interview, Steve Witkoff and Jared Kushner both suggested that there was a development plan that has been in the works for 2 years. Some have said it kind of models the Berlin style, where the Israelis will control one part of Gaza and whoever's on the other side will control the other. And the concern is that it will split Gaza. Israel retain a certain control. Do you believe that there will be at some point, if the decommissioning and the ceasefire holds, a full Israeli withdrawal from the Gaza Strip?
Well, this is actually, when you look at President Trump's plan, the 20 points, it has, the major themes are ending the war, no occupation, and no annexation. These are like three key principles that's been highlighted in the proposal. Now, the first redeployment to implement the first stage of this deal allows the Israelis to stay in Gaza within these lines, but ultimately they need to also to withdraw once also the international stabilization forces come into place, and then the process of decommissioning starts. Then the Israelis should withdraw from Gaza. But we need to go also to address the issue of and the root cause itself. We need to create the political horizon and the political environment, the right environment for the Palestinians and for the Israelis in order to reach an understanding and an agreement for coexistence. That's what we are looking for. We are looking for a two-state solution that will put an end for the suffering for both sides.
And do you think that is still attainable given the political makeup of the current Israeli government, which is talking about annexation and saying resettling Gaza?
It will always be attainable because, look, I mean, whatever the rhetoric that you are hearing now from the politician, at the end of the day, I believe there are enough, wise people who understand that you cannot have, two people treated differently under one state. And the Palestinians to have their own state, this is their right. And Arab Peace Initiative has actually laid a plan for Israel to normalize with the region in exchange of the statehood for the Palestinians and providing Israel with the guarantees. Now, we understand that after October 7th, there are a lot of complications and a lot of trauma that happened within the Israeli community that made maybe two-state solution unattainable at this stage. But the moment will come where we will have, we'll bring, all the parties together, and everyone will recognize that that's the only way forward. And I believe right now with the U.S. engagement, and we have seen how the president, the vice president, the special envoy Steve Witkoff, Jared Kushner, all of them, they are heavily engaged, and the Secretary of State heavily engaged in making sure that the ceasefire holds and making sure that we are crossing the line to the next stage, which is hopefully rebuilding, rebuilding the trust, rebuilding Gaza, and then also creating a political horizon for the Palestinian people.
Let's go back to the morning when Doha was attacked. And I wonder if you can talk to me, just reflect on that specific moment, how much of a game changer you felt in the dynamics of the region, when Israel carried out a strike in Doha, and what that meant for the state of Qatar, how Qatar decided that it was still going to remain engaged, even though it had just been attacked by one of the parties that was supposed to at least respect the mediator's role.
Well, look, Ayman, this attack was a shock. Well, it wasn't a shock only for us in Qatar, it was a shock for the entire world. And if you look at where the attack happened and how it happened, how it took place, it happened in a neighborhood, in a residential area where it's like a well-known location this is the location where the negotiations are taking place. And also there are schools, embassies around these buildings. And the trauma that they created for the Qatari people actually is also something like affected them significantly. Yet we still have a responsibility as a country to protect our citizens, to ensure that there are enough security assurances and security guarantees for them, and actually also ensuring that our role will remain adding value to put an end for the conflict and will not be affected. We always, if you look at the pattern of our policies, Ayman, in the last 10 years, we always take the high road. We always try to pursue diplomacy over any other options. We went through all the legal channels, the diplomatic channels, in making sure that this attack is not repeated and making sure that Qatar and the people of Qatar are protected. And then we resumed the talks. But what the people don't know actually is that on the day after the day of the attack, and when His Highness was speaking with President Trump, and President Trump was telling him that this might represent an opportunity for us to put an end for the war in Gaza, His Highness was very much positive on that. Although we have held all the communication with the Israelis at that time, we remained engaged with the U.S. in order to make sure that we can get to a solution.
This might be a bit of a difficult question, but there was some questions as to whether or not the United States knew about the attack. Does Qatar have an assessment as to whether or not, I mean, I know the administration came out and said that they didn't know about the attack, they were notified about the attack, but I imagine that it's a difficult situation for you and your leadership in the sense that on one hand, if America did know about the attack and they didn't warn you, that would be a breach of trust. If they didn't know about the attack, what does that mean that America's closest ally in the region, which receives billions of dollars, can carry out an attack against a very close American ally?
Well, I think the attack has affected like the heart of the security architecture of Qatar and the security architecture of the region.
Interesting. How
because so? When you look at this is for the first time that an Israeli strike killed someone from the GCC, and it killed a Qatari citizen who was just serving as part of the security details in that location, and he used to serve in the American embassy before that. So and everyone was shocked. Everyone in the region was shocked. You have seen the leaders from the region, from different countries, they were coming to Qatar, the summits that took place in Qatar. This has shaken like the entire understanding of what kind of security we have. Now, on the U.S. side, we, of course, the relationship that Qatar has with the U.S., we deeply appreciate it, we deeply value. And what we hear from the President and the Vice President and the Secretary of State, they were very clear that they have no knowledge about the attack. And of course, we respect what they are saying, and we understand that this is a decision that's been taken solely by the Israelis. But the concept itself to to feel betrayed that you are attacking, a mediation while it's ongoing. At the same time, on the day of the attack, there were the Colombians negotiating, and just hundreds of meters away from that location. We had the Rwanda and DRC negotiations ongoing, and having this attack in Qatar on 9th of a country that doing all these kind of mediations being attacked, this has never been thought of. And I think that the same shock we heard it from the U.S. and from the president himself, that he will not allow this to happen again. And he will make sure that all the assurances that we will require will be in place for us.
Yeah, I'm going to ask you about some of those mediation efforts in just a second, but just to close this out, how did the momentum then change after that? You said that President Trump spoke to His Highness and said this could be an opportunity. How did we get from then September 9th to the ceasefire? Did something change in the calculation of the Americans saying we're willing now to put leverage on Israel to bring them to sign this deal in a way that we hadn't seen before?
Well, I think that the attack itself has shown the U.S. that there are all the red lines being crossed now in the region. And, Qatar is a country that hosts 10,000 U.S. soldiers. And we have the largest U.S. airbase outside the United States that we are hosting in Doha. Having an attack from a U.S. ally is out of the equation for us. Yeah. And it was never calculated in our defense formula. And look, if you look at throughout the history of Qatar, we've been attacked 3 times. The first time was by Saddam Hussein. It was Scud missiles which followed the desert in the 90s. The second time was with Iran when they were responding to the U.S. and we intercepted most of the missiles. One of them has reached the target in our base, actually, in our side of the base, also not the U.S. side of the base. This attack was different because it killed one of our citizens. And basically, you know that how emotional we were at that time. But His Highness, when the president mentioned that to him, he stood up for it. He stood up for his region, and he put the region's interest ahead of his own interest. And we know that this is something that will bring stability to the region without, compromising the rights of our people and the rights for our country to be protected.
Do you think, because you said that it brought the GCC a little bit closer and other countries in the region saw that if Qatar can be attacked this way, they too certainly can be attacked. Did that change the calculation? Do you have any insight whether it changed the calculation of other countries in the region as to how they perceive Israel and whether or not a country like Saudi Arabia would go ahead with Abraham Accords?
No, definitely. Actually, it affected how the GCC looking at Israel now, because when they see the attack on one of the countries, you have seen the first leader who visited Qatar was Sheikh Mohammed bin Zayed, the president of United Arab Emirates, and then the next day we have the summit, and we have the Crown Prince of Kingdom of Saudi Arabia, and we have the defense ministers coming together a couple of days after the attack in order to coordinate and to recalibrate our defense formula. This attack was a shock, but was a game changer for the entire region. The entire GCC started to rethink where the threats will be coming from. Now we have seen, we have witnessed a lot of conflicts, and we have mediated in a lot of conflicts, and we went through a lot of unfortunate events throughout these mediations. But attacking the mediator was like
unprecedented,
and it was out of any calculation.
Speaking of your mediation roles, you were talking about some of the ones. I think you're mediating currently 7, maybe 8 conflicts around the world that Qatar is involved in. Why? Why do you want to take on the headache of negotiating one is fine, but then negotiating 8 around the world? Why take on that responsibility and put yourself in a situation where you constantly are in these high stakes talks?
Look, you have, if you are a state, you are between 2 choices. Either you are a passive and just stay there and doing nothing about it. I'm a small country. Thanks God, I'm blessed with resources. I have a small population, and I can just, focus on my country and my country development. And this is our priority for. But the region that we are living in, it's not it's not an easy region. It's a region that has a lot of history, has a lot of baggages that came from this history, and also you see proxies, ancient wars everywhere. We found out that Qatar's ability to move in a discreet way and below the radar, and making sure that conflicts can be resolved, even sometimes it can be prevented before it happens, and can be resolved in quiet rooms. And we proved that successfully. Qatar became a responsible player in that field. And mediation actually is something that enshrined in our constitution. And since the founder of the country, Sheikh Jassim, he's someone who was always calling for peace, always calling for engagement, for dialogue. And this is just a heritage that we have, and we are happy that today we are defined as global mediator, not only for the region, but this trust that we have built throughout the years in our mediations in the region made our mediation becoming more global. And you see that it's going all the way from Latin America to Africa to Asia, and that's basically what we are doing.
Are you making progress on any of the other ones that you feel will be resolved? I mean, you talked about Colombia, you talked about Rwanda. Which one are you most optimistic about?
All of them are ongoing right now. Honestly, I cannot distinguish one from another. But for example, with the recent conflict between Pakistan and Afghanistan, we hosted a round of talks that led to a ceasefire. Now the second round of talks to extend the ceasefire has been ongoing in Turkey in the last few days. And this is something which we are hoping that will see a result as soon as possible. But then DRC and Rwanda, it's also a very complex issue. We try to make sure that progress in the right direction, and that we have enough understanding in order to propose for them a meaningful solutions.
Okay. We can open up some of the questions now to members of the council, and I think we also have some people online. So I think if there's anyone that has a question, please raise your hand, and we can start in the back and work our way up front to this lady right here. Yeah.